For 15 long years, Eleanor Johnson quietly pushed her cleaning cart through the polished hallways of Sterling Enterprises, one of the biggest tech companies in Silicon Valley. To most people who worked there, she was just another face in the background, a janitor who came in late at night to mop floors, empty trash cans, and make sure everything sparkled before the morning rush. No one paid much attention to her. She didn't say much, kept to herself, and always had a calm smile that made her seem kind but distant. What no one realized, not even the flashy CEO or the board members sitting in their glass-walled offices, was that Eleanor wasn't just any janitor. In fact, she was the real owner of the entire company. It all started 20 years ago when Eleanor decided to take a risk with the little money she had left after her father passed away. Her dad had been a hard-working mechanic who never got rich but taught his daughter the value of grit and determination. When he died unexpectedly, he left behind a small life insurance payout. Instead of using it for something safe, like buying a house or saving it for retirement, Eleanor poured every penny into starting a tiny coding firm out of her garage. Back then, it wasn't called Sterling Enterprises. It was just EJ Tech, named after her initials. It was a scrappy little operation, but Eleanor had big dreams. As the years went by, EJ Tech grew faster than anyone could have imagined. The software Eleanor's team developed solved problems no one else could crack. Big clients started knocking on her door, and soon enough, what began as a two-person startup turned into a thriving business. But success brought challenges Eleanor hadn't anticipated. Running a growing company meant dealing with egos, politics, and endless meetings. The pressure mounted until Eleanor felt like she was drowning under the weight of her own creation. That's when she made a bold decision. She hired an ambitious young executive to handle the day-to-day operations while she stepped back into the shadows. His name was Richard Langston, and he seemed perfect for the job. Charismatic, confident, and eager to prove himself. To keep things simple, Eleanor chose to remain anonymous as the owner. Only a handful of trusted lawyers knew the truth about her identity. As far as everyone else was concerned, she sold off her shares and disappeared from the scene entirely. But stepping away didn't mean retiring completely. Eleanor loved the idea of staying close to the company she built, so she took on a role no one would suspect: a janitor. At first, it felt strange walking around in a uniform instead of a power suit, but over time, she found peace in the simplicity of the work. There was something soothing about scrubbing floors and organizing supply closets. It reminded her of how far she'd come without losing sight of where she started. Plus, being invisible gave her a unique perspective. While executives argued, in boardrooms and employees gossiped in break rooms, Eleanor listened and observed. She saw things others missed: the quiet struggles, the unspoken frustrations, and the moments of genuine connection. For more than a decade, Eleanor stayed in the background, trusting Richard to steer the ship. And for a while, he did a decent job. Under his leadership, Sterling Enterprises expanded globally, launched groundbreaking products, and became a household name. But as the company grew, so did Richard's ego. He started making decisions based on profit rather than principle. Employee morale plummeted as layoffs became frequent, benefits were cut, and workplace culture shifted from collaborative to cutthroat. Scandals popped up here and there, whispers of shady deals, unethical practices, and corners being cut to meet unrealistic targets. Eleanor tried to ignore these signs at first, telling herself it was just growing pains. After all, running a multi-billion-dollar company wasn't easy. But when news broke that Richard had falsified financial reports to boost stock prices, Eleanor couldn't look away anymore. Then came the layoffs, a mass firing announced during a cold, impersonal earnings call. Hundreds of loyal employees lost their jobs overnight, including some of the very people who helped build the company from scratch. One evening, as Eleanor finished mopping the floor near the developer's wing, a man approached her. He looked exhausted, his eyes red from crying. "I don't know what I'm going to do," he said softly, clutching a box of belongings. "They let me go today. I've been here since the beginning, working on projects that changed the industry. Now I'm sick, and they took away my health insurance too." Hearing his story hit Eleanor like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just bad management, it was betrayal. These were the people who believed in her vision, who worked tirelessly to turn her dream into reality. And now, because of Richard's greed, their lives were falling apart. Something inside her snapped. That night, as she lay awake staring at the ceiling, Eleanor realized she couldn't stay silent any longer. The next morning, Eleanor opened a locked safe hidden in her closet. Inside were documents she hadn't touched in years, papers proving she was the true owner of Sterling Enterprises. For so long, she'd resisted stepping back into the spotlight, fearing it would disrupt the balance she'd carefully created. But now, watching the company she loved crumble under Richard's leadership, she knew she had no choice. It was time to reclaim what was hers and set things right. With a deep breath, Eleanor put on a crisp blouse and slacks, leaving her janitor uniform hanging in the closet. She grabbed the company charter and headed to the office, ready to reveal the secret she'd kept for 15 years. Little did anyone know the quiet woman who cleaned their floors was about to change everything. Eleanor arrived at Sterling Enterprises earlier than usual that morning. The parking lot was still half empty, and the hallways echoed with the hum of fluorescent lights flickering to life. She didn't head straight to her cleaning cart like she normally did. Instead, she walked toward the executive wing, somewhere she hadn't set foot in years. Every step felt heavier than the last, but Eleanor reminded herself why she was doing this. This wasn't just about revenge or ego. It was about protecting the company she had built from the ground up, the people who depended on it, and the values she believed in. When she reached Richard Langston's office, she paused for a moment outside the heavy wooden door. Through the frosted glass, she could see him sitting behind his massive desk, scrolling through emails on his laptop. He looked as confident as ever, completely unaware of the storm about to hit. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor knocked firmly on the door. "Come in," Richard called out, his voice sharp and impatient. Eleanor pushed the door open and stepped inside. Richard glanced up briefly, his expression shifting from annoyance to confusion. Can I help you?" he asked, giving her a once-over. Clearly, he assumed she was there to clean or deliver something trivial. "I need to speak with you," Eleanor said calmly, her tone steady despite the nerves bubbling beneath the surface. "And I'd like to call an emergency meeting with the board." Richard raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the audacity of this woman standing in his office. "An emergency meeting? Who exactly are you again?" Eleanor placed the folder containing the company charter on his desk. "My name is Eleanor Johnson," she said, meeting his gaze directly, "and I'm the founder and sole owner of Sterling Enterprises." For a split second, Richard froze, his face blank with disbelief. Then he burst out laughing. "That's a good one," he said, leaning back in his chair. "Seriously, what's going on here? Are you some kind of prankster?" But Eleanor didn't flinch. She opened the folder and slid a stack of documents across the desk. "These are the original incorporation papers," she explained. "And these," she pointed to another set of papers, "are stock certificates showing that I own 100% of the company. If you want proof beyond that, my lawyers have copies of all correspondence confirming my ownership." Richard's laughter faded as he flipped through the documents. His eyes widened as he realized they were legitimate. For the first time in years, maybe even decades, he looked genuinely rattled. This has to be a mistake," he stammered. "How could I not know about this?" "It's not a mistake," Eleanor replied evenly. "I've chosen to remain anonymous for the past 15 years, letting others run the company while I stayed in the background. But your actions recently have forced me to step forward." Richard's face turned red, partly from embarrassment and partly from anger. "You can't just waltz in here and—" "I can," Eleanor interrupted, her voice firm now, "because I'm the owner. And based on everything I've seen over the past few months, the falsified reports, the unethical practices, the mass layoffs, I've decided it's time for a change. Effective immediately, you're fired." The room went silent. Richard stared at her, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Finally, he found his voice. "You can't do this. Do you have any idea what I've done for this company? I took it global. I made it profitable." "Yes, you did," Eleanor acknowledged. "But at what cost? You've sacrificed integrity, trust, and the well-being of our employees for short-term gains. That's not leadership, it's exploitation, and I won't stand for it anymore. Richard leaned forward, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. If you think you can walk in here after 15 years and take over, you're insane. The board won't let you get away with this. They already know, Eleanor said simply. Earlier that morning, she had sent copies of the same documents to each member of the board, along with a brief explanation of her plan. We'll discuss next steps during the meeting. Defeated but unwilling to admit it, Richard slumped back into his chair. Fine, he muttered. Let's see how long you last when everyone realizes you're nothing more than a glorified janitor. Eleanor ignored the jab. She didn't owe him an explanation, or anyone else for that matter. With a final nod, she turned and left the office, leaving Richard to stew in his own frustration. By the time Eleanor entered the boardroom, word of her confrontation with Richard had spread like wildfire. The board members were already seated around the large oval table, their faces a mix of curiosity, skepticism, and outright shock. When Eleanor walked in, dressed professionally and carrying herself with quiet authority, the room fell silent. Thank you for coming on such short notice, she began, taking a seat at the head of the table. Without hesitation, she laid out the evidence, the incorporation papers, stock certificates, and legal documentation proving her ownership. As she spoke, the initial murmurs of disbelief gave way to stunned silence. One of the board members, a middle-aged woman with sharp features and an even sharper mind, spoke up first. Why now? She asked. Why reveal yourself after all these years? Eleanor hesitated for a moment, choosing her words carefully. Because the company I built has strayed too far from its core values. I founded Sterling Enterprises to create opportunities, solve problems, and improve lives, not to enrich executives at the expense of employees. What we've seen under Richard's leadership is unacceptable, and it's time to reset. Another board member, a man with graying hair and a skeptical frown, chimed in. Even if you are the owner, firing the CEO isn't a decision to be made lightly. We're talking about serious consequences for the company, for shareholders, for everyone involved. I understand the gravity of this situation, Eleanor replied, but consider the alternative. Continuing down a path that prioritizes greed over ethics. Is that really the legacy we want to leave behind? The debate went on for nearly 2 hours, with questions flying from every direction. Some board members were hesitant, worried about public perception and potential backlash. Others saw the logic in Eleanor's argument and supported her decision. By the end of the meeting, however, it was clear that Eleanor had the upper hand. Not only did she hold all the legal cards, but her passion and conviction were undeniable. As the meeting wrapped up, Eleanor addressed the group one last time. Change won't happen overnight, she admitted, but I'm committed to rebuilding this company the right way. Starting today, we'll focus on transparency, accountability, and putting people first. Together we can turn things around. With that, the board adjourned, and Eleanor left the room feeling both exhausted and exhilarated. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, like she was finally reclaiming the purpose she'd lost sight of so long ago. Back in the hallway, whispers buzzed among employees who had caught wind of the drama unfolding upstairs. A few brave souls approached Eleanor, curious but cautious. Is it true? One of them asked. Are you really the owner? Eleanor smiled softly. Yes, she said, and I'm here to make things right. As she walked away, she couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she knew she wasn't alone. Together, they could build something better, something worth fighting for. The news spread faster than wildfire. By lunchtime, the entire office was buzzing with whispers and speculations about what had just happened. Employees huddled in corners, peeking over cubicle walls or exchanging hurried texts under their desks. The janitor, the same woman who had quietly cleaned their floors for years, was now the owner of Sterling Enterprises. And she had fired Richard Langston, the larger-than-life CEO everyone either feared or admired. At first, no one believed it. Some thought it was an elaborate prank, maybe even a viral marketing stunt to boost morale after the layoffs. Others assumed Eleanor must have been some eccentric billionaire playing dress-up for kicks. But as details trickled out, Richard packing his things in a hurry, escorted by security, board members emerging from the emergency meeting looking stunned, it became impossible to deny that something monumental had occurred. Eleanor didn't waste any time. She wasn't the type to sit back and let chaos reign while people scrambled to figure things out. Within hours, she sent out a company-wide email explaining the situation. It was short, clear, and honest. She introduced herself properly, apologized for keeping her identity hidden for so long, and outlined her plans moving forward. "I founded this company because I believed in its potential to do good," she wrote. "Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that mission. My goal is to bring us back to our roots, to focus on innovation, fairness, and respect for every single person who contributes to our success." She ended the email by inviting employees to join her for a town hall meeting the next day. "This isn't just my company," she added. "It belongs to all of you. Together we'll rebuild something stronger and better." The town hall took place in the main conference room, which was packed to capacity. Employees spilled into the aisles, leaning against walls or sitting cross-legged on the floor. The atmosphere was electric, a mix of excitement, curiosity, and lingering skepticism. When Eleanor walked in, dressed simply but confidently, the room fell silent. For a moment, all eyes were on her, sizing her up, trying to reconcile the image of the quiet janitor they knew with the powerful leader standing before them. "Thank you for coming," Eleanor began, her voice warm but steady. "I know this has been a whirlwind, and I imagine many of you have questions, so let's start there. Ask me anything." Hands shot up immediately. One young developer stood up hesitantly. "Why did you wait so long to reveal yourself?" he asked. "Why stay hidden for 15 years? Eleanor nodded, clearly expecting the question. "When I stepped back from running the company, I wanted to ensure that leadership could grow independently without feeling overshadowed by me. At the time, it felt like the right decision. But over the years, I realized that stepping away completely meant losing touch with what really matters: the people. Watching how decisions were made and seeing the impact those decisions had on all of you is what brought me back today." Another employee, a woman in her 40s who worked in customer service, spoke up next. "What happens now? Are you going to undo everything Richard did?" "I'm not here to erase the past," Eleanor replied. "Some of Richard's initiatives helped grow the company, and we'll keep what works. But where we've gone wrong, like cutting benefits, ignoring diversity, or treating people unfairly, that stops now. Starting today, we're putting people first." This earned a round of applause, though Eleanor quickly raised a hand to quiet the room. "Before anyone gets too excited, I want to be clear. Change won't happen overnight. Rebuilding trust takes time, and I need your help to make it work. That means open communication, honesty, and a willingness to try new approaches. If you see something that doesn't align with our values, speak up. Your voices matter." As the Q&A session continued, employees grew more comfortable asking tough questions. Someone brought up the recent layoffs, and Eleanor listened intently before responding. "Reinstating everyone who was let go is my top priority," she said. "I've already spoken with HR, and we're working to bring people back as quickly as possible. In the meantime, if anyone knows someone who's struggling because of the layoffs, please encourage them to reach out. We'll do whatever it takes to support them." Her words resonated deeply. Many employees nodded in agreement, visibly moved by her sincerity. Slowly but surely, the tension in the room softened. People began sharing their own stories, how they'd felt undervalued, overlooked, or pushed aside under Richard's leadership. Eleanor listened patiently, nodding and occasionally jotting notes. She never interrupted, never dismissed their concerns. Instead, she validated their experiences and promised action. By the end of the meeting, the mood had shifted entirely. What started as uncertainty and doubt transformed into cautious optimism. Employees left the room talking animatedly, some laughing, others wiping away tears. For the first time in years, they felt seen and heard. Over the following weeks, Eleanor rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She reinstated the laid-off employees, including those whose health benefits had been cut mid-treatment. Those who couldn't return due to personal reasons received severance packages and letters of recommendation. Word spread quickly, and former employees flooded social media with heartfelt messages thanking Eleanor for stepping in. But Eleanor didn't stop there. She launched a series of initiatives aimed at creating a healthier, more inclusive workplace. First, she established a diversity and inclusion task force to address systemic inequities within the company. Employees from all levels and departments volunteered to participate, eager to contribute to meaningful change. Next, she introduced flexible work policies, recognizing that not everyone thrived in a traditional 9-to-5 environment. Parents, caregivers, and students juggling part-time jobs finally had options that fit their lives. To foster transparency, Eleanor implemented monthly Ask Me Anything sessions, where employees could ask questions directly to her and other executives. No topic was off limits, and Eleanor answered every question honestly, even the uncomfortable ones. During one session, a junior engineer asked why executive bonuses were so high compared to entry-level salaries. Without missing a beat, Eleanor announced plans to redistribute funds, ensuring fairer compensation across the board. Behind the scenes, Eleanor worked tirelessly to rebuild relationships with clients and partners damaged by Richard's scandals. She personally reached out to key stakeholders, apologizing for past mistakes and outlining steps to prevent similar issues in the future. Her humility and accountability impressed even the toughest critics, earning back trust that had been lost. Despite the whirlwind of activity, Eleanor made a point to stay grounded. Every evening, she returned to her cleaning cart, spending an hour or two tidying up the office. To her, it wasn't about clinging to her old role. It was about staying connected to the heart of the company. Employees often found themselves chatting with her during these moments, sharing ideas or simply venting about their day. Over time, those casual conversations became a cornerstone of her leadership style. One afternoon, as Eleanor wiped down a table in the break room, a group of interns approached her. They looked nervous but determined. "We wanted to thank you," one of them said shyly, "for everything you've done. We feel like we actually belong here now." Eleanor smiled warmly. "You do belong here," she said. "Each of you brings something unique to this company. Don't ever forget that." As the interns walked away, another employee pulled up a chair beside her. "You know, it's funny," he said. "For years, we thought you were just the janitor. Now we find out you're the boss. Kinda makes you wonder who else around here might be hiding a secret identity." Eleanor chuckled softly. "Maybe we're all more than we seem," she said. "The important thing is to stay true to ourselves and to each other." With that, she finished cleaning and headed home, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Little did anyone know, the real work was only beginning. Months passed, and the changes Eleanor implemented began to take root. The once toxic atmosphere at Sterling Enterprises slowly transformed into something vibrant and alive again. Employees who had kept their heads down out of fear or frustration now walked through the halls with a renewed sense of purpose. Conversations buzzed with energy, not just about deadlines and deliverables, but about ideas, innovations, and how they could make a difference. It was as if the entire company had taken a collective deep breath after holding it for years. Eleanor stayed true to her word, leading by example in ways that inspired everyone around her. She didn't retreat into an ivory tower like so many executives before her. Instead, she remained approachable and hands-on. Every morning, she still started her day pushing her cleaning cart, even though people constantly told her she didn't need to do it anymore. "I'm not doing this because I have to," she'd say with a smile. "I'm doing it because I want to." That simple act spoke volumes. Seeing the owner of one of the largest tech companies in Silicon Valley mopping floors alongside them reminded employees of what mattered most: humility, hard work, and respect for every role within the organization. It wasn't uncommon to see someone from the marketing team grab a broom to help clean up after a meeting, or developers pitching in to organize supply closets. Slowly but surely, The barriers between departments began to break down, replaced by a culture of collaboration and mutual support. One of the biggest shifts came when Eleanor introduced a new initiative called Innovation Fridays. Once a week, employees were encouraged to step away from their usual tasks and spend the day working on passion projects, anything that sparked their creativity or solved a problem they cared about. Teams formed organically, bringing together people from different departments who might never have crossed paths otherwise. A customer service representative teamed up with a designer to create a more user-friendly interface for clients. An IT specialist partnered with a salesperson to develop tools that streamlined communication between teams. Ideas flowed freely, unhindered by bureaucracy or fear of failure. The results were staggering. Within months, several of these side projects turned into full-fledged products that boosted revenue and earned rave reviews from customers. But more importantly, Innovation Fridays reignited a sense of excitement and ownership among employees. They weren't just cogs in a machine anymore. They were creators, problem solvers, and contributors to something bigger than themselves. Eleanor celebrated these wins publicly, making sure credit went where it was due. At monthly town hall meetings, she highlighted standout projects and invited team members to present their work. One particularly memorable presentation came from a group of interns who had developed a sustainability app to reduce the company's carbon footprint. When they finished speaking, the room erupted in applause, and Eleanor stood up to give them a standing ovation. "This is exactly why we're here," she said, "to dream big, take risks, and leave the world better than we found it." But Eleanor knew that fixing Sterling Enterprises wasn't just about improving processes or launching cool products. It was about healing wounds. For years, employees had felt disposable, undervalued, and overlooked. Rebuilding trust required more than words. It demanded action, so Eleanor made it her mission to listen, to truly hear what people needed and respond accordingly. She reinstated benefits that had been cut under Richard's leadership, including comprehensive healthcare plans and tuition reimbursement programs. She also established a mental health initiative, providing free counseling services and hosting workshops on stress management and work-life balance. These efforts weren't flashy or headline-grabbing, but they meant everything to the people who benefited from them. For one employee, a single mother struggling to juggle work and raising 2 kids, the impact was life-changing. After years of barely scraping by, she was finally able to enroll in night classes thanks to the tuition assistance program. When she graduated 6 months later, Eleanor surprised her by showing up at the ceremony. As the woman accepted her diploma, tears streaming down her face, Eleanor gave her a hug and whispered, "You did this, not me, you." Moments like these became the heartbeat of Sterling Enterprises. Employees began sharing stories of how the company, and Eleanor herself, had changed their lives. Some posted heartfelt messages on social media, while others wrote letters directly to Eleanor. One note read simply, "Thank you for reminding us that we matter." Of course, not everything went smoothly. Change always comes with growing pains, and Eleanor faced her fair share of challenges. There were skeptics who doubted her intentions, convinced she was only trying to polish the company's image. Others resented the extra effort required to adapt to new policies and practices. And then there were moments when Eleanor herself questioned whether she was doing enough. Late one evening, as she sat alone in her office going over feedback from recent surveys, she felt overwhelmed. Despite all the progress, some employees still expressed concerns about workload, pay disparities, or lingering mistrust. Eleanor leaned back in her chair, staring at the ceiling. Was she failing? Had she waited too long to step in? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. It was a young engineer she recognized from Innovation Fridays. He hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. "Sorry to bother you," he said. "I just wanted to say thank you for listening, for caring, for believing in us." His words hit Eleanor like a wave, washing away her doubts. She realized that perfection wasn't the goal, progress was. As long as she kept showing up, staying open, and fighting for what mattered, she was moving in the right direction. By the end of the year, Sterling Enterprises had undergone a transformation no one could have predicted. Morale soared, productivity skyrocketed, and employee retention rates hit an all-time high. The company was named one of the best places to work globally, earning recognition for its commitment to diversity, innovation, and ethical practices. Clients praised the renewed focus on quality and customer satisfaction, and investors cheered as profits climbed steadily. Yet none of these accolades compared to the pride Eleanor felt walking through the office each day. Gone were the days of tense silences and forced smiles. Now laughter filled the air, and spontaneous brainstorming sessions popped up in every corner. People greeted her warmly, not out of obligation but genuine affection. They saw her not as a distant figurehead, but as part of the family, a leader who rolled up her sleeves and worked alongside them. As Eleanor pushed her cleaning cart down the hallway one evening, she paused to watch a group of employees gathered around a whiteboard, debating ideas for their next big project. Their passion was infectious, their camaraderie undeniable. In that moment, Eleanor felt a deep sense of fulfillment. This was what she had dreamed of when she first started EJ Tech in her garage all those years ago. A place where people thrived, grew, and built something extraordinary together. With a quiet smile, she picked up her mop and got back to work. The journey wasn't over yet, but for the first time in a long time, she knew they were heading in the right direction. A year had passed since Eleanor stepped out of the shadows and revealed herself as the true owner of Sterling Enterprises. The company was unrecognizable from what it had been under Richard's leadership. Where there was once fear and division, there was now unity and purpose. Employees weren't just showing up to collect a paycheck. They were invested in the company's mission, proud of their work, and excited about the future. Eleanor stood backstage at an auditorium packed with employees, journalists, industry, leaders, and even a few local politicians. Today was the annual awards ceremony where Sterling Enterprises would be honored as one of the top companies to work for globally. It wasn't the first award they'd received that year, far from it, but this one felt special. It symbolized how far they'd come and validated everything Eleanor had fought so hard to achieve. As she waited for her cue to go on stage, Eleanor glanced around the bustling area behind the scenes. Staff members bustled about, adjusting microphones, checking lighting cues, and offering last-minute pep talks to nervous presenters. Despite the chaos, there was an undeniable energy in the air, a shared sense of pride and accomplishment. One of the event organizers approached her with a clipboard in hand. "You're up next," she said with a warm smile. "Ready?" Eleanor nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nerves. Public speaking had never been her strong suit, but tonight wasn't about her. It was about everyone who had helped turn Sterling Enterprises into the beacon of hope it had become. Taking a deep breath, she stepped onto the stage. The applause hit her like a wave as soon as she appeared. Hundreds of faces turned toward her, smiling, cheering, and clapping enthusiastically. For a moment, Eleanor froze, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of support surrounding her. Then she spotted familiar faces in the crowd. The young developer who had asked why she stayed hidden for so long, the single mother who graduated thanks to the tuition program, the interns whose sustainability app had gone viral. Seeing them gave her strength. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "I don't think I've ever been this nervous in my life." The audience laughed, easing the tension. But honestly, standing here today feels surreal. A year ago, I walked into this very building not knowing if anyone would believe me when I said I owned the company. Now look at us. She gestured to the crowd, her eyes glistening with emotion. This award isn't mine. It belongs to all of you. Every single person in this room played a part in turning Sterling Enterprises into what it is today. You showed up, spoke your truth, and worked tirelessly to make this company better. Not just for yourselves, but for each other. Eleanor paused, letting the words sink in before continuing. When I founded this company 20 years ago, I did it because I believed technology could solve real problems and improve lives. Somewhere along the way, we lost sight of that vision. We got caught up in numbers, profits, and egos. But over the past year, we've reminded ourselves of what truly matters: fairness, transparency, and humanity. She went on to share stories of resilience and triumph, how teams came together to tackle challenges, how individuals found courage to speak up, and how small acts of kindness rippled through the organization. She talked about the innovation Fridays that sparked groundbreaking ideas, the diversity task force that fostered inclusivity, and the mental health initiatives that saved lives. Each story drew murmurs of agreement and bursts of applause from the audience. But let's be clear, Eleanor added with a wry smile. We're not perfect. There are still days when things don't go according to plan, when disagreements arise, or when we stumble along the way. And that's okay. What matters is that we keep moving forward, together. Her final message was simple yet powerful. Success isn't measured by stock prices or headlines. It's measured by the impact we have on people's lives. That's the legacy I want us to leave behind. Not just a successful company, but a force for good in the world. As she wrapped up her speech, the room erupted into thunderous applause. Some people stood whistling and cheering, while others wiped away tears. Eleanor took a bow, then stepped back to allow the next presenter to take the stage. Backstage, she exhaled deeply, feeling both drained and exhilarated. After the ceremony, Eleanor mingled with attendees during the reception. People lined up to thank her, shake her hand, or simply share a kind word. One elderly woman, a retired teacher who had invested in the company decades earlier, approached her with tears in her eyes. "You've restored my faith in businesses," she said softly. "Not many people care like you do." Eleanor smiled, touched by the sentiment. "It's not just me," she replied. "It's everyone working together. That's the only way change happens." Later that evening, as the crowd thinned out and the lights dimmed, Eleanor slipped away unnoticed. She returned to the office, finding solace in the quiet hum of empty hallways. Pushing her cleaning cart down the familiar corridors, she reflected on the journey that brought her here. From scrubbing floors in solitude to standing on a stage accepting accolades, it had been a wild ride. Yet none of it would have mattered if she hadn't stayed true to herself, and to the values that defined her. The following morning, Eleanor called a meeting with the board of directors. They gathered in the same conference room where she had revealed her identity a year earlier. This time, however, the atmosphere was lighter, filled with optimism rather than tension. "I've made a decision," Eleanor announced once everyone was seated. "It's time for me to step down as CEO." Gasps echoed around the table. One board member leaned forward, incredulous. "Are you sure? The company is thriving under your leadership. Why leave now?" Eleanor nodded, anticipating the question. "Because this company doesn't belong to me anymore, it belongs to all of you. My role was to reset its course, to remind everyone of our core values. Now it's your turn to carry the torch," she explained her plan. "Appoint a diverse team of executives to lead the company collaboratively, ensuring no single voice dominated decision-making. She would remain involved as a consultant, offering guidance whenever needed, but the day-to-day operations would be in their hands. "Trust yourselves," she urged. "You've earned this." Reluctantly, the board agreed. Over the next few weeks, Eleanor worked closely with the new leadership team, sharing insights and preparing them for the road ahead. Though bittersweet, she felt confident leaving Sterling Enterprises in capable hands. On her final day as CEO, Eleanor pushed her cleaning cart through the office one last time. Employees noticed immediately, gathering around to express their gratitude. Some hugged her, others presented handmade cards and gifts. One group performed an impromptu song, dedicated to her, complete with off-key harmonies and heartfelt lyrics. By the end of the day, Eleanor's cheeks hurt from smiling so much. Before heading home, she stopped in front of the large mural in the lobby, a colorful depiction of interconnected gears, symbolizing teamwork and innovation. Beneath it, someone had added a small plaque engraved with a quote Eleanor often repeated, "Together we build something extraordinary." Tears welled up in her eyes as she read the inscription. For 15 years, she had kept her secret, content to observe from the sidelines. Now she realized her greatest strength wasn't staying hidden, it was stepping forward when it mattered most. And in doing so, she had inspired countless others to do the same. With a final glance at the mural, Eleanor walked out of Sterling Enterprises, closing the door behind her. Her journey as the mysterious janitor-turned-owner might have ended, but her legacy would live on, in the hearts of those she touched, in the culture she shaped, and in the company she loved.